Yeah, I didn't realize he had a wheelchair to the role that's.
I did not know you mentioned it.
Do you have a copy of this one?
Everyone. Good morning. It is September 3rd, 2024. Welcome to our 9 a.m. Board of Commissioners meeting. Let the record reflect that we have Commissioner French. We have all 4 commissioners in the meeting room this morning. I know Commissioner Kearns is going to be just a little delayed. He should be joining us by Zoom. It is the first day of school for everybody, so or a lot of classes are starting for the first day of school districts. So exciting for that and for kids to be going back to school with nice weather. It's always good. So with that,
You'll go back to the 14th.
I'm gonna go ahead and start the meeting, and we've got a busy morning and some hard stops. So I just want to make sure we stay on time. So we're gonna start with Mr. Burgess. Welcome. We haven't seen you for a while.
Good morning, commissioners. Yes, I have been on my summer break too, but it is time to get back to school, like you said, and it's actually timely. I think legislative stuff really does kind of heat up when school starts. Legislators vacationing, staff vacationing, things like that. And I had the pleasure of talking to all 5 of you in the past, well, I guess the 4 of you that are there, and Commissioner Kearns as well. A couple, 3 weeks ago, or over the last month, in an effort to kind of jumpstart looking at the legislative agenda for next session, for the 2025 session. Started by talking to all of you about first capital budget projects and then policy legislation ideas that you might have. And we didn't talk a lot about transportation, and that's only because I think our list from last year is relatively intact. I think between Jeff and I will deal with that one in the future, but because the legislature didn't do a transportation revenue package of any sort or any new projects, I think it'll be relatively intact with probably some changes. So we focused on capital and policy. As I spoke to you all, I heard recurring themes from each of you, which was good, encouraging. Not that I anticipated there being any issues, but it was just, there was some unanimity before we'd even really started the process without any of you knowing that about each other's priorities. There's a list there in front of you. Thanks for bringing that up on the screen. And I think we've talked, when I talked to you each individually, talked about on the capital side, having, a couple, 3 projects that the county would focus on. And then on the policy side, developing the legislation around the topics that you all coalesce around. These aren't necessarily in order, a little bit in order, I guess, because I did hear some recurring ones from all of you, especially on the capital budget side. So my goal here would be to start this process of getting us to a clean and finished agenda, maybe in hopes of doing it by early October, if not sooner, depending on how this discussion goes, and then getting that together and then doing the same program we've done with meeting with legislators, walking through the list, and then in the policy legislation category, getting bills drafted, which could take some time to do. So if you don't have any questions, I'll just jump right in on the capital side. If that's okay, commissioners, can I keep going?
Questions? No, I'd say go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Well, these are all projects that you know about: the Plants Ferry Park, crisis stabilization, green buildings. I'll come back to green buildings in a minute. Hilliard Daycare was on last year, and I think everyone was surprised that the legislature didn't fund that. The PFAS issue, and the Bellevue Water District, that is also a carry forward from last year. I did hear, the top 4 or 5 I heard the most about from you all. But on the green buildings, I wanted to offer up, I did some additional work with some colleagues on green buildings. The issue with that is that the legislature in last year's budget authorized a coordinated list through the Association of Counties to consolidate and compile the list of obligations for counties in general. And that list isn't due to the legislature till the 2026 session. So in terms of getting backup support from other counties, because they're all in the same position you are. Because of the structure of that proviso and gathering the information, which you all will be a part of submitting your information. I don't know how timely it will be to get support from other counties. I think it'll, because of that proviso, it'll push off WASAC making it a priority, though I do think it's something that we should keep front of mind with legislators. So I just wanted to throw that caveat out there before we start talking deeper into the list. But when it comes to the other projects, do
Just a
those
second.
all, oh, sorry.
Commissioner Jordan has a question.
On that main buildings item, didn't we get money for, I think we got 700,000 plus for the public works building.
773.
So I'm missing the point about a coordinated list versus what we got last year.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner. The coordinated list would be a list of needs for all counties in the state of Washington as they try to comply with the state requirements.
So are you suggesting that we shouldn't make a specific request this coming session because of
I just, like I say, I don't think it would be timely right now, given that we would be, well, I mean, certainly take your direction. If we want to make the ask, we should make the ask. I just think the ask will be more powerful next session, or the 2026 session, when the rest of the associations, the rest of the members of the Association of Counties have done the work and submitted their projects, in addition to, you know, the school districts and all the other public buildings that are dealing with the same issue. It's really going to come to a head during the 2026 session, because I believe your compliance date is 2027, correct?
Yeah, and I think all the universities are
Right.
the ones that are going to be really from that, because they have the most buildings on their campuses.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Commissioner, did I clarify that then for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So are there any, I mean, do we want to go through the process of ranking these? You know, I know that on the detox one, the Crisis Stabilization Center, that you've got some federal dollars coming out of that, I believe. I think I heard from you. You know, given the mood of the legislature, I think that's a really good project that I think would be welcomed. I mean, any of them would, for that matter, but that one in particular jumped out to me. But I guess I'd look for your some comments on some of these and what direction we want to go.
Jeff, go ahead.
So yeah, I think if you guys could rank them if at all possible, and then if you want to, as we discussed last week, put in a request for the governor's budget. I think whatever you rank as number one would make sense for that request. And as we talk, that's just, you know, it's a little tactic. It's not exactly gonna make sure you get something, but it might be worthwhile trying. The governor's budget requests are due by September 15th. And it does take a little bit of time to put the paperwork together, send it in. So if you guys could come to a number one, we can start working on that if you so choose.
Commissioner French.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, from my standpoint, and I'll go ahead and share with you my rankings. PFAS is number one for me. We have got a pretty good list compiled, but we're still waiting for some information from Ecology, and they seem to be dragging their feet in terms of getting us information so that we can finish out the pricing on this. And in the absence of their participation, we'll probably do a swag to make sure that we're covered. But then crisis stabilization would be number two. Bellevue Water District, that would be number three there. If they don't get that water system replaced, there are going to be 30 some homes that are going to be without water. That seems to be a crisis, and been working with Marlene Feist over at the city to try and get coordinated enough to get to deal with that. Hilliard Daycare would be number four. Lance Ferry would be number five. Conservation District would be six, and YMCA would be number seven. That would be my list.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mike, some of these are, would you recommend, Jeff and Mike, like some of these we're supporting, like the YMCA has their own ask probably to build the new facility on the south side. But so some of these are like more like our asks because they're specific to county-owned properties. And then some of them are supporting other community asks. Is there a way to kind of
We can.
use that in our rankings or kind of put them in two categories?
I
We
think,
can,
Mike,
Jeff, well, commissioners, I think when I spoke to you, I would urge you to, you could do it both ways. I think what you just said makes sense, that you have county priority asked and then other community projects you support. In the past, you haven't had what I would call direct county projects. It seems like this year you do, especially with the Crisis Stabilization Center and the, I guess the green buildings would be too, but we kind of, talk that off the list a little bit, but that project is a direct county asset. That doesn't mean, of course, that if you prioritize other ones above that, but I would just urge, in my experience, I think it makes the most sense to do it that way.
my question based on Commissioner Waldriff's question, like we have our own list. If we send a letter of support that would go like in a packet, for example, with the YMCA, in your experience, do legislators then see that as our ask, or do they see it as us supporting? Do we cannibalize?
No, I mean,
letters?
I think they would see it as supporting, but I think if we made it clear with legislators and then when we submit the forms, that if you all coalesce around one project or two, and we just say, hey, these are the counties number 1 and number 2. And especially in the case of the Crisis Stabilization Center, because that's a county asset, that would make sense to them.
Yeah, I guess, or like, I mean, I didn't know what the Y was on the list. So this is my first time knowing that it's on this list. I would say, for us, it's us putting in a letter that they get to put in with their request, a letter of support, not having it be on ours, because it does get confusing in some of the legislators that I've talked to. Because otherwise then they look at our list and go, well, you guys have a really long list, because they're looking just at, if they're taking a quick glance, it's a long list. So I think some of those are better if we're just putting a letter of support in for that entity, like the Conservation District or the Y, to say we support it, but it's, so it doesn't show up as a priority number 1 for us.
I think too, commissioners, when we meet with the legislators and then when I'm doing my work in January, February, when session starts, I can make clear that the county's number 1 priority is X, Y, or Z. I guess that'd be 3 priorities, but the county's number 1 priority is X, and you've directed me as such. But though we do support other projects, again, this is the county's number 1. There's a way to communicate that.
Perfect.
So on the Bellevue Water District, since the city is going to be the lead in building that system out and stuff, that seems to be maybe a better joint application as opposed to just the county, because we're not going to actually receive the money. The money, if it gets funded, would actually go to the city because they're the ones building out the system. So I'm wondering if that maybe, we change that to be a joint request from both the city and the county.
I would say it'd probably be worth having a conversation with Representative Volz from the 6th district, because that's his district and he's
Great.
very in tune with that.
Yeah.
As to what he thinks would be probably best for us to do.
Well, and he and I had that conversation last week. And so he and Riccelli are working to try and put the funding package together. And they were trying to figure out who would be the best entity to receive the money, whether it be the county or the city. And in the conversation with Mike, he said, well, if the city's going to build it, then we ought to be giving the money to the city and not the county. So that's the reason why I just brought it up. I didn't remember that conversation, but we want to circle back around with Mike. That's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, because I mean, it's a priority for those individuals.
Yes, but is it a priority for the rest of the county? Probably not, and stuff. So that is a concern.
But it's a priority for the legislators.
Yeah.
That serve that community. So,
Yep.
so that's why I'm just trying to figure out again, where does it fit versus here? happy to put a letter of support in.
Maybe that's the best we do is just a letter of support and take it off the list.
Yeah,
At the
So-
bottom,
Commissioners, I think it's pretty easy on your legislative agenda to, when it comes to the capital budget section, say the county's number one priority is, again, is X. So let's just say for argument's sake, we're saying it's the Crisis Stabilization Center. And then below that, say we also join others in the community in support of the following projects with maybe less detail about them, because those other entities are carrying that forward, the messaging forward on those.
I'd be happy with that. And then I'd also be happy to just have us start drafting letters of support for these
for the
groups.
bottom three,
Yes,
we have consensus on
and
that.
I think the Hilliard daycare is gonna be that same because
Yeah.
that's
So
not
the
a,
Northeast
county
PDA
asset.
project, right?
Yeah.
But we are a member of the
right.
PDA.
So Hilliard plus the bottom three, are we letters?
Yes, and we could put
So,
Hilliard at the top of that secondary list to say we strongly,
Well, I
we
think
give extra
It is,
emphasis.
yeah, year two on that, and I think it's the ask amount is not huge, if I remember, I can't remember
Well,
I think the Y is gonna take a couple of years to build up their capital needs.
I suspect that the Hilliard daycare will be easily in the couple $1 million ask. Well, I think it was 2.5 last year, if I remember. So. It might be more now. They've been encouraged by some of the legislatures to go bigger. No,
Oh,
go bigger.
to go bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guess it depends on what kind of pot they can pull that from, daycare funds or,
what was the conservation district ask again?
So theirs is, they're building out a, why can't I think of the term?
like a campus.
Yeah,
But
but it's
it's a
on their
farmer's-
campus. It's a farmer's market.
Year round, right?
Yes, so they're building out they have a building there that is very conducive to that they're trying to build out for, community use, community support, having, a farmer's market that can kind of be indoor, for that area,
It
which,
includes a commercial kitchen too, doesn't it? for
Yes.
People to use.
Okay,
or people could rent the commercial kitchen then on off times.
I remember walking into that room and hearing that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So again, a great project. They got some funding last year. I know legislators, Suzanne Schmidt in the fourth is very much supportive of that. But I think we're gonna see too, all the, and Mike, you can correct me, I mean, even all the reps are, there's limited funds and they're gonna have to prioritize within their own funding too. What they're gonna put as the top of their list for.
I'd agree with that, Commissioner. I think in general, we're gonna hear that there's budget constraints, both on the operating and then operating, of course, trickles into capital too. But I think we're gonna hear that a lot more this year than we have in the last 10 years.
I think so too, especially based on what happens in November with initiatives.
Correct. Yes.
That'll drive even more, so. So anyways, yeah, okay, so we're down to, letters for 4 items and having them still be on our agenda, but kind of as a secondary. So then it takes us to Plantsberry, the Crisis Stabilization Center, and PFAS filtration systems. Those 3, right? Because we're putting green buildings off the list this
yeah,
time.
taking off list.
Okay, so that takes us to those 3.
Commissioner, could I ask Commissioner French about the filtration systems? Who would be the lead agency that would be working to make those available, install those for folks in their private well systems?
It could be the county. It could be ecology, but ecology doesn't seem to want to play in terms of giving us data so that we can size the request. But in my mind, those are really the 2 entities that would be in a position to be able to administer the program. Basically what you're talking about doing is, and we've got a lot of the data, but we don't have a complete list of, wellheads, size, what size filtration it goes on there, whether it's ag or house or both. And then what we've been suggested to include is like 3 replacement of the filters, because every time you replace a filter, it's $5,000 and stuff. So we're pricing it based upon that kind of structure. But you know, Ecology could do it. Ecology has the information to where they could do it. They could actually right size the dollar amount if they just give us the data. But they seem to be sitting on the data to be able to size the request and stuff. So that's why I said part of this we have, part of it might be a WAG to make up for the lack of data that we're not getting from Ecology.
Well, the reality is it should be Ecology because they're the ones that are in charge of the water infrastructure.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it's DOH or the health district, because it's more of a health related, not, I don't know, just wondering. Those are ideas too.
But
I'm
it should
more-
be Ecology who's driving it
Yes.
to
Yes,
tell
The
us
dollar amount.
what, not the dollar amount and who they would reciprocate out to. Because it's really on them. They're the ones that are monitoring and managing the water systems and what happens like with the aquifer and all of that. It's not counties. We're only being driven by what the Department of Ecology is requiring us to do. And so it really should be on them. And you know this way better than I do, but I think that's been my frustration with this all along is they keep trying to push it to somebody else. And it's
That's
like, we need you to stand up and be the lead on this because this is your lead. Because I mean,
Commissioners, can I ask on that filtration system is, and Commissioner French, you and I talked about this in more detail than the others. Do you know, do the legislators in your region share the same frustration I'm hearing with the department?
Those that are aware of the frustration share it, but not all of them are aware of the frustration. So I don't want to say it's universal because I haven't had a chance to talk to all of the legislators that will be, but I know that Representative Graham, Representative Bolts, since it's a good part of it's in the 6th, and Senator Poley are aware of it, but I have not gone beyond that because well, I'm just focused on the ones that are in the district and stuff. So,
Sure.
but I know that Bercelli is familiar with it, but there's nobody behind him that is familiar with it. So
Fair enough. Okay.
that's what I know. You know,
Okay.
and, you know, I just want to echo Commissioner Cooney's comments because, you know, Ecology is consistently looking for somebody else to do their job. And going back to what you suggested, Mr. Jordan, maybe it is in better hands of the health department because the health department is more related to administering programs where Ecology is a regulatory agency and not an administrative. So, you know, if the health district would agree to administer the program, I'd be happy to give it to the health district because they're used to delivering services where Ecology is not their regulatory agency.
I think that was Commissioner Waldrop.
Oh, then I apologize.
Both said it.
You both said it. I looked and I saw both of you there, so.
But I think that's the challenge. I mean, Ecology just doesn't.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean they can't help develop something that
Right.
probably health district, you know, is usually in charge of.
Yeah.
Administering
services.
Administering the pieces that need to
Yep.
be administered around different health, environmental health projects. So just a thought, but I mean, we're in a new normal here of trying to
Right.
figure out.
Well,
You
and
know,
even the
how
health
we-
district wouldn't have staffing or ability, so they would have to be receiving funds to do that.
Yep.
Right.
Which again takes it away from getting more money to the people that need it. So I mean, so it's all these things that have to be figured out that
Yep.
are important.
Commissioners, as I hear you talking about this, it seems to me that this is something that your delegation broadly, and it makes perfect sense to have started with those in the 6th district, because if that's where it is primarily, that makes sense. But having said that, this is a regional problem, right? Because it does impact the aquifer for the whole region, if I'm understanding this properly. So, probably let me think about it and maybe talk with Jeff a little more offline about just maybe more of a broader strategy that's beyond just a capital budget request. Because I don't think we'll get very far on capital budget if we don't have some more acknowledgement or understanding of who exactly we're asking this of and what we're asking. I think, well, that's not true. It sounds like you know what you want to ask, but just who's the proper agency, and will that agency acknowledge whether or not it's even an issue they want to deal with?
So Mike, I think we've got more discussion we need to do. Just a second. Commissioner Jordan has a comment and then I'm gonna.
Well, I have maybe two questions. Could one of us reach out to the health district and find out whether they would be willing to receive funds for that purpose? So that's number one. Number two, if we are trying to get information from Ecology to price out a cost on something like this, maybe we could write Ecology a letter requesting whatever the specific information is that we want, then we're on record asking for it in a clear way that we can all see. So just an idea.
Appreciate that. We have inundated them with emails saying we need this information, we need this information. They know specifically what we need. They have the information. They've just been reluctant to release it. And it's like, how do we fix the problem when you won't let us know how to quantify it so we can go after the money? And it's really very challenging.
Are you looking for the number of affected entities, or what is?
No,
the
we
specific
don't need to
information?
know the number of affected entities. What we need to know, they've got an inventory of what wells need to be to have filtration system on it. They know what the size of the wellhead is, and they know what the distribution is, and they won't release it. And so we don't want to know properties. We don't want to know individuals. We just need to quantify the ask. And for some reason, they've been reluctant to even give us that information. So we've got information from the Air Force in terms of wells that they've tested and stuff. And we've got a list of volunteers that have said we would love to be able to get a filtration system on our water. But Ecology has got a list, and that's what we're looking for. Is we don't need to know names, we don't need to know addresses. We just need to know the size of the darn wellhead so we can price it. So that's the frustration. If we want to send a joint letter, God bless you. Terrific.
I think it's worth a try. If
Oh,
you
yeah.
Send emails, it's like, at least it's coming from all 5 county commissioners.
Yeah, try
To-
anything.
To state that, so would, I don't know,
And I think commissioners, and I don't know if this is common, but if you had legislators join you on that letter, I think it would be helpful.
yes,
Okay.
very good, thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, so we are beyond time with Mike. So Mike, I think, can we get to have you back next Monday? We have a Monday meeting, right? Would you be able to come back next Monday and then we could talk about policy legislation? And if anyone has
Sure.
between now
Yeah,
and-
for sure. And then I should have said in the beginning, commissioners, this will take us several cracks to get through this. So I was not expecting finality today anyway. So I'm
Yeah.
great.
No.
We're starting the dialogue, but yes, you need to
Yeah.
go. I will
But
see you
it's-
next Monday. Have Gina shoot me the link or the calendar invite.
Okay, but if there's questions, because this is kind of our first time seeing the list, if any commissioners have questions, they're welcome to call you.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Or Jeff too. And we'll run it down, any information down you need.
Okay, perfect,
For
thank
the
you.
governor's budget, are you guys
Just-
in a place to? Cause that's a very different timeline than the legislative. agreement. If you wanna make a play for it.
What do you think he's willing to fund?
Probably is.
The top two, to me, look like the most likely.
In a brief
Well,
discussion.
commissioners, keep in mind too, that the request to the governor helps the other requests because you're gathering the information, you're doing a lot of the messaging background work that you'll use going into January.
Just doing work on one thing early, getting it done early, and not gonna fund it, but it might help.
So Representative Riccelli has indicated that he would champion the Plants Ferry Park application because he's a big soccer fan and big advocate for that facility and stuff. And so I'm wondering if that could be left in Riccelli's pocket so that we can focus on the crisis center for the governor. I don't think the governor's gonna include both of them,
Agreed. I think you pick one.
but if we've got a champion for one, then let's find a champion for the second.
Plausible strategy for sure.
Is there, with Plants Ferry, I can't remember I know we have a lot of pieces that we want to build out in that park. If we go for, you know, a certain dollar amount that you were.
We're talking a
about,
million as a max.
is it likely that we'd be able to build out something in the next couple of years? Cause I know we have quite the delta, right? So I'm just kind of wondering strategically, we know we want to build. And we've already told the federal government, we want to build that expansion to the Crisis Stabilization Center in the next couple of years. So we know that's on the horizon and we know we have other funds to match with. I was just wondering with Plants Ferry, how likely, if we were to get $1 million, what's the timeline of being able to spend that?
I would think it's very possible, because we're going out to bid right now for the 5 million-ish that came
The
from
first, was
ARP.
it a couple fields?
If we knew this, couldn't we just add that on?
That'd be the anticipation, so
It would be for phase two, it'd be for phase one.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
In
okay.
that, in the original report, the high level estimates were anywhere between, I think, 6 and 9 million to be able to complete the 3 fields, the road access in, the parking lots, the fencing around it, and the lighting. We're in the process of working with our progressive design build team
With the
to
two.
do a validation. Yep, and so just for Plants Ferry as well, they're doing a validation to see what can we include in it for the monies that we have. We don't anticipate we'll be able to complete all of those fields. So any additional money that we can get will help us do the up to more fields or the full completion of it. And that would be, we anticipate by the end of next year to be completed.
Okay, so the timeline for that is actually,
Fits really nicely.
I would say Plants Ferry first, the stabilization center second on that. Just because I think we do have a funding source for the stabilization, we're getting some federal dollars. I think Plants Ferry, doing the work there can show that we're trying to work upstream in the crisis. Because again, having those fields available for kids is, I mean, Riccelli's talked about,
Yeah.
Representative Riccelli, and others is, you know, was part of having the park out in, you know, the West Plains and having it have some field is getting kids out and being active, as we just saw with the Launch Northwest and the Spokane Public Schools, getting kids engaged in real life, you know, and, you know, whether it's sports or just having these different activities keeps them out of our crisis system. So I can see where, you know, having an opportunity, and I know the governor usually, the state has funding for some of these youth sports. So I think it could fit in with that. And see if the funding could come out of that pot versus capital. So I think I'd lean there and use it as a means of trying to go upstream to make sure that our youth aren't getting into our crisis system.
well, if we could make. I mean, this is just getting it in the governor's, hopefully in the governor's budget. And then you still have to work through all the
work,
legislative.
it doesn't change the work next year.
But knowing that we have money on the table and we're planning to build, I kind of like asking for Plants Ferry because it's real timely and you could say, well, with this additional $1 million, we'd be able to build out the 3rd field or something, you know, we're gonna get some of that information
You
back.
can work with Doug to see
Yeah.
what that next $1 million would be.
We'll know by the time, well, before well, if it's $1 million for the governor's budget, I think we're still probably gonna be a little bit short, but we'll know in plenty of time before the final legislative agenda gets set by the commissioners as to what our delta is.
I think that's.
Okay.
And
I
I
hear
mean, it
two
doesn't mean we're not
points.
gonna still ask for the crisis stabilization
Right.
matching is the federal government contribution.
Still looking to get to 3. I know Commissioner Kearns last week
And Commissioner
spoke
Curtis is
to
on.
Plants Ferry.
Yeah.
Josh, are you available to give us a
Yeah.
1, 2 on Plans Ferry versus the crisis?
I'm a big supporter of Plants Ferry.
Year three.
There you go.
Going, gone.
You got 3 head up.
Okay, so we will, I'll
I don't
work
think you can
with,
go wrong either way.
and I think they're both very well primed. I think they both should be in our full legislative budget. So I will work with Doug on getting that info together and with Mike on. keeping it.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you, commissioners. I'll see you next week. Bye.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, then that's gonna take us to Randy, and you have one from the airport.
do, Mr. Crowder and Mr. Schultz, the airport.
This first thing is just to let you know, on your legislative agenda for next week, on your consent agenda, excuse me. We're gonna have 3 resolutions for the airport. The first one is going to be the master bond resolution. So this is the one we've been working on for a good year to get set for all issues of bonds. The second one you will see is the supplemental bond resolution. And this is the resolution to borrow $150,000 in bonds based on the airport this morning, adopting a resolution to request us to do that, a series resolution. And the third one is going to be the airport revenue bond agreement, which the airport has also signed already. So those are the 3 documents. Have them here just in case you have any questions about those resolutions that we could answer today. Otherwise, those will be on your consent agenda for next week.
Any questions?
Can you remind me, do any of these require city approval as well, or is it just, and
Great.
where is that at,
Great
if
question.
so?
I'll defer to Randy, but
The joint resolution, we passed that earlier
Yeah.
this year. That allowed us to go through this step, so. As far as my understanding is that was the only thing that we needed. from the city.
yes, sir, that's correct. We have kept the city informed. They have all documents. Of course, Council President Wilkerson is on the airport board. And, the airport board met this morning and did pass the bond resolution agreement, as Randy indicated, so everything's in order.
That's
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay, oh, go ahead.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I just want to, again, say thanks to Randy and Pacifica, PFM, all financial advisors, Rob. It's been a really great team effort and we just really appreciate it. We're excited to move forward on the projects that we've outlined previously to the commissioners that will be funded by the bond issuance. And we're excited to get started. So just again, thanks to Randy and the team.
Great, well, as I continue to go around to all these other airports, it's like, it's amazing, everybody is under construction right now.
Absolutely.
I don't
Lots of
think
bond
there's
issuances going on as well in the airport space.
Yeah.
And I think that timing is going to be, we're really excited about the timing for a lot of different reasons. But we think the timing is going to be very favorable.
I think the October timeframe is gonna be the right time to do this, and I think, you know, with all that construction going on and bond issuances being out there, I mean, I think buyers are comfortable and understand what's going on with airports, so I think it is a very favorable time.
Completely agree. I think what we're seeing in the market is that all of the airport bond offerings are being well oversubscribed. And that's a very good situation for us.
And when we are going out, we don't anticipate other airports really being on.
Exactly.
And since we're a new credit, that will also be more favorable to us.
So lots of good timing for the issuance.
No, I think so, I'm excited for it, so excited for you guys, and yes, I think the team has done a great job getting it all ready, so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, we're behind on time, but
Actually, it's very helpful for us to be part of the prior discussion and regardless, so it was great.
you're welcome to listen in anytime.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Next we have sales tax. And I was going to do it just not to give Jason a stigma that he only talks when it's bad, but he really wanted to do this.
Yes, it's very exciting. Good morning.
Buy more coffee.
Let me guess, RV sales are up.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
They are. All right. So for August, we collected 7.1 million. Which brings us to about 50.3 million for the year. We're a little bit under budget. So right now, year to date, we're 0.4% over last year's actuals.
And just as a reference point, when we did the 24 budget, we were targeting 2% over last year's actuals. So we are running behind that, which is why when we talk about the 25 budget, we're actually not targeting an increase over the 24 budget because we don't expect 24 to meet our target. So we're hoping with 24 and 25 together, we will get to that number. Also on the chart on the bottom right, you see a trend of the year over year. It's a rolling average. So this is a 1 year rolling average. So back in August of 22, we were up 10.3% over the prior year, over the prior 12 months. And right now we're only at 0.5% over the prior 12 months. So this trend has been going down. Long term, if you look at 2021 years, our trend is to have 4% increase year over year. So we are well below that. And as you'll also notice on this chart, 7 of the last 12 months have been below the preceding year for that month. So sales tax is soft. Next slide. Yeah, sure. This slide really answers or it's a slide we're going to continue once a quarter. We get quarterly data from the Department of Revenue. This shows where the sales are generated. So as you will see, this last quarter, 47.5% of the sales were generated, in the city of Spokane, which is down 3.1% from 2019. City of Spokane Valley fairly flat at 24.2%. And then the county is currently at 16.9%, which is up 1 point.
Mr. French.
Yeah, and so not to be deceived by these numbers, these also include sales for folks that live in the unincorporated area, but because of the Growth Management Act and we don't have retail in the unincorporated area, are forced to buy in the city of Spokane.
These would include any sale that was transacted in the city of Spokane.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah.
But if they use Amazon and deliver to their house outside, then that is a county sales because it's destination. The other big, you'll see, you see, okay, city of Spokane's down 3.1, so county's only up 1.4. The other big benefactor was City of Liberty Lake. They are also up 1.3% over that same period of time. Their percentage is much smaller, but they've had a lot of growth out in that area. So, and they do have their own retail out there. Next slide. Any more questions on that slide then? Okay, then I'll let Jason go to the next slide.
Next slide is just a snippet of 2 different sales tax and the distribution amounts. So it's what the different jurisdictions collected for specific sales tax. So criminal justice sales tax, county received about 490,000 for August, and for the public safety sales tax, the county received about 725,000. So it's just to show you the allocations between cities and our jurisdictions rather. Next slide. So these parts are just some snips of different data sources just to kind of show what the trends are looking like. The chart on the very left, the black chart, shows past due credit card balances that are at their highest level since 2012. So it'll show you on the white line, it's 30 days past due, the blue line 60, the red line 90 days past due. So watching the chart, you can see there's an increase in the amount of people are becoming delinquent with credit card balances. One thing that was interesting, right, was the reason that's important, right, is people's capacity to spend is diminishing. So, which obviously affects sales tax. The overall rejection rate for applicants has been increasing. So people are still trying to get credit. They just don't have the ability to do so, which is also a really strong telling indicator of the direction that we're going. And then the Q2 quarterly report on household debt and credit, which is from the Federal Reserve, shows that as of June, 3.2% of outstanding debt was in some stage of delinquency, which is increasing. And then 9.1% of credit card balances and 8% of auto loan balances are transitioning into delinquency. The chart on the right, it's a little bit confusing. If you look at it, it's showing the increase over prior quarter delinquency rates. So if you look at mortgage debt on the far right, you see Q2 2024. That's a 0.95% increase over Q1 of 24. So you see that there's definitely an increase in all these debts, with the exception of maybe student loan debt, which is large. On the bottom right, so this is higher data and quit data. So as of June 24, the quit rates are the lowest they've been since the pandemic. So also another indicator that consumers are realizing where the economy's at and aren't as excited to go quit that job and go try to find another one. And the higher rates of June 24, the lowest levels outside of the pandemic since 2014. So also showing firms realize or where we're going and trying to cut some expenditures where it gets too bad. Next slide. So for the economic sectors, they remain pretty flat over like the past 2 months. So retail trade is flat for the year over year, 0%. Construction is at negative 8% growth over last year. And it's been about that for the past 2 months. And accommodation and food sectors, negative 5% growth over last year. And it's been pretty consistent for the past several months as well. So while it's still low, I guess the good side is it's not plummeting at the same level that it was. It's starting to taper off. We're still below, but it's not decreasing as much at the same rate. Next slide. That being said, new non-residential construction and residential construction is still not looking good, right? They both stayed the same, almost the exact same percentage for the past several months. So non-residential building, negative 37% year over year, and residential building, negative 3% year over year. On the right-hand side of the screen is something that we've done differently. So we looked at the Architecture Billing Index. So this is a good indicator. It gives you a good leading indicator where the economy is going to go over the next 9 to 12 months, right, based on building. So buildings, yeah. So if their score is less than 50, it means the billing is decreasing. If the score is over 50, then the billing rate is increasing. So May it was 42.4. See, this July was 48.2. So it's still less. It's not reporting to be as bad, as frequent as a couple months ago. It's still not great. It's the 18th consecutive month of a billings decrease and the 4th consecutive month of the decline in value. Yes, sir.
Is this the same data that was in the Business Journal? The latest edition of the Business Journal did a tracking of billings for architectural firms. And it also showed that, you know, it was down, it was below 50%. But they were not optimistic that the numbers were going to change anytime in the near future.
Yes,
So,
that's actually where I got the idea.
Okay, all right, well then,
As a, from a
nice
couple months
job.
ago. Yeah. Save myself.
One other thing, just on construction, like in 23, our new construction added by the assessor was $1.6 billion. This year, we're probably gonna be down in the 1.2 range, which is still higher than assessor Conus originally thought. But then it's the residential that has helped
Yeah.
weigh that, especially out in my neck of the woods out in the East County, so.
Next slide. So the economics indicators surrounding vehicle sales, so out of the four, 3 of them actually are starting to go up a little bit. Used vehicle sales, even though it's down 13% year over year, it's starting to, the negative growth is starting to subside, starting to get a little bit better. And as Commissioner French mentioned, and Commissioner Kern sent an article last month about it, other motor vehicle dealers are starting to show an increase, that's a really good indicator. So if we're going to take any positives from this report, that would be one. New car dealers not doing so well, and that's actually dropping a little bit. And auto repair and maintenance, they're still investing in fixing their existing vehicles. Next slide. In the sector surrounding eating and drinking, they've all stayed pretty flat. So full service restaurants, just 1% growth year over year. It's been like that for 2 months. Same with limited service restaurants. Snacks and non-alcoholic beverage bars are starting to normalize a little bit from that big drop that we had due to reporting. The only one that really decreased was the drinking places, alcohol beverages, for June, which coincidentally is when we started this budget process. So, next slide. 7.1 for August, right? And that's a 3.1 decrease over the prior period, same year. 5.3 year to date. And there's an error in there, so I apologize. Where it says 1.1 decrease, that actually should be a 0.2 million increase. I put down a budgeted amount as opposed to the actuals. So we're at 50.3. So again, 0.4% over last year. And again, consumers are a little more credit conscious, right? Their capacity to spend is decreasing. And just the positive, I guess we could take any maybe upside risk to this, is that as interest rates drop, it should help the capacity for people to spend. They won't have to pay as much towards their credit card bills. Ideally, you would think as interest rates drops, home sales should increase, and then when people are buying homes, we want to furnish it with some new stuff. So that should help a little bit, but probably won't see that until maybe next year. That's it.
Questions?
Questions?
I keep hoping for a good news one Monday. I know. I'm everybody's favorite person in the county the past couple weeks. So.
Look, it's a great report, Jason.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
very comprehensive.
No, it really, I mean, you can see we don't have questions because you're doing such a good job explaining it all.
All right. Katniss.
So yeah.
We're in this severe state of depression.
That's all part of it too, yes. It's like, yeah, I think we're all experiencing kind of through that COVID timeframe where things just changed and we're kind of coming back to somewhat of that reality that all the dollars that were pumped into the economy are no longer there. And so we're just, kind of figuring that out again. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And then next we'll talk about the budget, the original rollout. I did send to the commissioners, you do have it electronically in an email that I sent yesterday. Tessa's also got some printouts. Chris, I apologize. I know I did not send it to you, so I'll give you Chris.
Sorry.
No, it's the whole packet. This is a lot smaller than we did last year. Next week, we intend to have more of like the binder we had last year. It will be electronic though, trying not to kill that many trees. But that next week will, give you by each agency, like the overall summary, the detail of it. And then it'll also have their additional requests for budget and also for capital. Because this year, based on the direction from a couple of weeks ago, we took a turn, and I think it's a good turn that we took. And I think it is a good model for future years going forward as well, where we say, this is your target budget, and then the commissioners have some extra money that they can say, this is where we want to fund those extra things, because we know costs go up. So if your target budget is 0, that means you really have cuts, and what cuts are we going to be adding back as commissioners? And so based on a couple weeks ago, our target budget was the 2024 budget. This is the summary we've rolled up. Some departments did a great job. Some still have work to do. So what you'll see in the revenue, we are projecting right now 257,000 for next year. Again, we are flat on sales taxes. I show property taxes going down. That's because last year we budgeted the full amount of property taxes and then put in the expense, the amount that went to mental health, developmental disabilities, can't say it, and veteran services. But those go directly there. They never hit our budget. So this year I just put in the amount coming to the county general fund. We also have charge for services that's going up, primarily related to the Valley contract for the sheriff's department. And we will keep refining those as we're going through the LECAP in September. We may be adjusting that number for next year's budget. So that is going to be still a little bit fluid. And we're still working with accounting on what the entry is going to look like on the when we did defease those 2019 C bonds earlier this year. We will have a little bit of revenue coming in from that. I just don't know from the auditor's office yet what that number is going to be. So I'm working with them. So this number could revise upward a little bit. If you go down into the expense side, you can see our wages are up about $10 million. Again, we added back in all vacant positions. Some of the departments have pulled some of those positions out, either as a way to get to their budget, or they actually said, we don't need these people anymore. But that was a big increase. Also, services is down. Primarily, I would say that's from detention services, reducing some of their costs. But you can see for the target adjustments, the bottom line, we still had some departments, total of $14.6 million that were over last year's budget. So they either didn't turn in anything or were not able to get down to that amount. So per the direction, we entered a negative amount, but that is one where those departments, it'll be part of their requests to add back in. But you may say no, you may say yes. So we're still working with those departments this week coming up. So that gets us down to, we have about $10 million roughly of revenue over expenditures, and this is without any capital as well. So even if we had left that full 14 in there, we would be at -5 right now and nothing for capital. So, and then we did have some departments, like I said, that did reduce because we started out at about -20. So that's where we're at in the holistic, and that's, like I said, we'll get you more information next week, your packet. Tessa's suggestion, we'll have like a little spreadsheet with all the asks, and you can say, it'll kind of add it up for you as you go. You'll know how much money you're under, over. You know, again, we do have some in savings if you wanted to use some, but again, that is decisions that you guys will make as part of commissioners. I think that's all I have on that slide.
Chris,
Be
Commissioner
sure.
Darrell first.
Can you just say again, the 130 million budgeted
Yes,
for salaries and wages?
that is.
I'm always confused what the vacancy situation is.
Okay, so we did not, so in this year's budget, we added all vacant positions back in 2 weeks ago. We added all vacant positions back in because the department heads or elected officials know their business better. So they really should be the ones that say, I don't need these positions, or I'm not gonna fill them. Some departments did do that. After that exercise, our budget for salaries and wages as it currently sits in there is 133.5 million, which is a $10 million.
And that's all vacant.
Unless the department said take some out for you.
And
So for
those
example,
ones are out.
Those
of
are out of
number,
that number, yes.
Which is an ongoing process.
That is an
Okay.
ongoing process, yes.
Okay.
So for example, detention services, to get down to their number, they said, I'm not gonna fill this many COs. But their supplemental maybe, I would like to get back 3 of those, or I wanna get, and this is the cost of the first 3, and here's the cost of the second 3. Or juvenile, they did the same type of thing where they said, I'm not filling them that fast. I think these will be empty, but I'd really like to have them back. Here's what it costs.
Then your target adjustments is where we need departments to come in
Yes,
and build.
yeah, I think it's, you're probably gonna even do some of the departments that did the exercise. You may want to still talk to them also, especially some of the larger ones like detention services, juvenile, people like that. But then the others that didn't turn in those things, yes, I think we need to meet with those departments as well. And so if you go to the next slide, you'll see more of the detail by agencies. Oh, I'm sorry.
So just a couple of follow-ups. So does the salary and wage number right here, right now, because I know it's gonna change.
Yep.
Does that include any assumptions about any contracts?
It does. It does include some contract discussion, assumptions. For the DSA, it includes the one that we talked about at
Executive.
thank you, under executive session. Includes the same thing for jail, and it includes an assumption after talking with HR for the rest of the contracts. So yes, it does include that. It also has an assumption in there for the non-repped people that would mirror the lowest union contracts.
And then my other question was, the use of fund balance for 2024. Is that? I don't remember.
That was some one-time where we received the money the year previous. And we said we're
okay, 'cause
using
I'm like,
that
I remember
money.
putting that in the budget, but it was carryover
It's-
from the previous.
Yeah, basically in the budget, it said beginning revenue and ending, beginning fund balance and ending fund balance. Those were different by $11 million. And it was capital purchases that we had.
It's like the Monsanto settlement that the county had received in 23 that we decided to utilize for some capital purchases,
Right,
and
right,
a
yeah.
portion went to,
And then ARP.
yes, thank you.
ARP, like the ballpark. You know, we originally had money set aside in 23 for the ballpark. But then had to roll that forward into the 24 budget.
Got it,
So,
okay, thank you.
And the million you see there for the 25 budget are some due balances that will be used. That is basically money that's sitting, that has been designated, that is sitting in fund balance right now, that would roll forward into 25.
Okay, so that's not using fund balance to balance the budget.
No,
It's
it's-
already,
It's money they had set aside and said we're spending it. Yes,
we've already made plans to spend that.
correct.
Okay. Mr. Jordan.
So the guidance to departments on what they have to work with was to match the 2024 budget in
Yes.
amount.
Yes.
Was that always the same? Or was it 2023 actual at one point, or was there any change in that guidance during this
Oh.
budget process?
Yeah, originally we just said we want, we are going to begin the budget taking out all vacant positions as of June 19th. And it's gonna be tight, so we need you to keep your M and O equal to the preceding year. It came in where M and O was up $10 million. We were out of balance.
So that
It
would
was,
have been equal to 23 actual.
it was higher than the 24 budget. 25 budget was higher than the 24 budget by over $10 million.
But when you say keep M and O equal to preceding year, what?
To the 24 budget.
Right.
Which was higher than the 23 actual. We knew then the commissioners were asking, well, where can we have savings? And I don't believe budget office is the best person. People answer that. It's really the people that are operating those departments. And so that's where we pivoted through this budget season 2 weeks ago and said, you know what, instead of taking all the vacancies out of there, because we don't know your operations and it could have been a fluke timing, we're adding them all back in. But because our revenue is flat, and it's going to be very similar to the 24 adopted budget, your target budget for 25 will be your 24 budget. And that was communicated to them, I believe it was Tuesday, 2 weeks ago today. And so they had a really short time. I mean, they had just over a week to do anything. I mean, they did a lot of good work in that time, but I knew we wouldn't be complete by today. So that's why we're doing a summary roll up today. We'll get more detail to you, the more full packet next week.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there, I mean, could there be an issue where I'm just at some of the departments where all their positions are like regulatorily required? Or, I mean, are there some issues where we would like to see cuts, but I'm just wondering, it may not be apples to apples for every single department.
It's not apples to
right?
apples for every department. You have some departments that maybe it's only 2 people. And they have
How
no
do
M
you-
and O.
yeah,
And so
so how do
maybe
you-
you're gonna have to say, I can't cut that $8,000 out of that department to leave
Yeah.
them flat. Or I think there's definitions on regulatory. What is regulatory and how much is
Well, I'm just
regulatory?
thinking
So,
of like the public defenders.
But
If we're required to have,
But how,
Vice,
but you're not,
yeah.
you're required to have them, but you're not required to have a certain amount. So again, it's.
got it. So that's where we need to dig in a little bit.
Exactly,
Okay.
but that's where you guys will dig in, that's where. I didn't want to be the manager of that because I don't know their business. And I don't control purse strings, so the budget office does not, so you guys do, so that's where, yes. I'm pushing it back to you where it belongs.
So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Strength in numbers there.
And I think the next slide will kind of give a little more overview, insight into what Randy was just talking about as which departments are able to meet the target, which ones weren't, and what the adjustment details consist of. So
Yeah, what I was getting with
No.
public defenders was more about like the caseload standards that we can't.
You know, I
Yeah,
totally, I knew where you were going with
But
that.
yes,
But there
there's
may be
always a
other
conversation.
options to
Yes.
meet that as well,
True.
so.
True.
So the budget office, the commissioners did not make any vacancy adjustment estimates in the budget. It was all up to the departments to determine which positions they felt like were vacant and did not need them. Or they're still in there. So there's no assumed budget. There's no assumed vacancy adjustment in either departments prescribed, if you will.
You know, a good example on that is I might have a department and it's so large, I'm never fully staffed the full year. So even though I maybe need all these positions, do I really need budget for all those positions for the full year? If I'm so large that I run 2 to 3 on average vacancy all the time. So we did not at the budget office prescribe any of that. We will give you data so that if you want to prescribe it, or if the department head wants to prescribe it, you guys can, but we're not going to prescribe it from the budget office. Any more questions on that first slide? We'll go to the second.
Just real quick,
Yes.
on this one.
Yes,
So you're saying next week you'll have more department by department breakdown?
it's gonna be in these categories, but there'll be a lot more information behind each one. So for example, animal control, you will see a lead sheet that shows 22 actual, 23 actual, 24 budget. And that budget's actually going to say the current budget because Questica, our budget software is very good at telling you what the current budget is. So in May, we did some budget amendments. Those budget amendments will be added into the 24 budget in next week's sheet. But this was the 24 adopted budget that came out of those sheets. I just don't know how to break it down necessarily. So
Quick follow-up.
yes.
Will we see by department what decisions are being proposed by
yes,
each department
yes.
to either stay on balance or
Yes.
not?
Yes.
Okay.
So anything that the department's turned in, I'll just say detention services, they made up about $6 to $7 million of difference. So they have a number of saying, in order, these are the things I'd like to add back first to last. You know, if I can add all back 7, great. If I can add back 4, here's my first ones to get you to 4. They will also have any capital expenditure requests in that pack. So you will see this is what they've done for the last 22, 23, 24 budget, 25 requests. Here is their detail by account of that same data. And then here is their requests, both to add back and then for capital.
But every department, will we see that same thing for every department?
You will have that for each of those agencies that are listed here to the extent that we have that data. If we don't have that data, it will not be in there. And then I'd say that, as Commissioner Cuny said, that's more of a follow-up for the commissioners to have with those departments.
And you'll have the revenue for each of these departments. as
Yes.
well in there. Cause this sheet is just the expenditures. Correct.
Correct. Yeah, we'll have, because some departments have revenue and some do not. I mean, as I worked in the auditor's office, you know, vehicle licensing brings in 4.1 million and they only spend X. But really, that 4.1 is used for the whole county. It's not just for them. We really focus more on we have so much revenue. How do commissioners want to give you that up?
Yeah, well, I just think of animal control.
Yeah.
You know, how,
Yes, how much revenue are they expecting from licenses, things like that?
cause that's one of those I always pay attention to
Yep.
because it used to be an enterprise fund.
Yes,
And it's
well, we
not.
will have that detailed also, Commissioner Cuny.
So,
It'll be revenue and expenditure by account detail. Okay. So on the next, if there's no more questions on this page, the next 2 pages are really all our other funds. So these are all the special revenue, debt service, capital, and enterprise, and the internal service funds. These are preliminary numbers. We will keep adjusting these as we get more data, like REAP 1 and REAP 2. Some of that's going to adjust based on decisions the commissioners make in the capital improvement plan as we go through that in this budget as well. You know, one of the, I mean, on the capital improvement plan, it's gonna be the helicopter cabin body. We have to pay for it in 2025 if we're still buying it. And here's some funds we've already received for it, such as we sold the Huey for $915. We haven't had to pay, you know, but what are the funding decisions and, you know, for all our capital for the county for the next year? And that will be actually, that the CIP goes out for 5 years. So, and that will amend our comprehensive plan and also. Any questions on those 2 pages? I think it might have been 2. That was just 2. And that is really all we had for today. Again, this was just a overview of where we are at right now. We will have more detail on the general fund next week on Monday during our Monday session. And if there's anything else you would like to see in addition to that, please let us know.
So when you have the book electronically,
Yes.
is it gonna be out on a
We will-
server somewhere so we can just access it, so it's not.
We
clogging
will
up the
post,
email system?
we
It's a good one.
can do that, yes.
What's the large?
Instead of me, yes, instead of us emailing them, yes.
I think it's.
We'll work on
just
getting
the
it in a
link.
shared folder.
we will give you links to a shared folder for that.
And then.
And then we will
How
also
do we take
post
the
it
agenda
like we
report
always do on our on our website for the public to see.
Yeah.
And these documents will go out there today, so.
Yeah, I think that would just be easier if it's a link
Sure.
that you can go access.
I will get somebody smarter than me to get that set up.
Yeah, but I just think otherwise it.
I doubt there is.
Yeah.
Oh, I know there
Really
is.
For our Milton.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, there's no reason to keep mailing it, so.
No, but I like having the link and then.
But if you link, you can then download it to your laptop so you can make changes if you want, so.
Sounds good. Perfect.
All right.
Mr. French.
So based upon where you're at now, all funds, other services plus the general fund, we're sitting at about $800 million budget for next year. You're anticipating that that number is going to change between now and when we're done. Are you anticipating that it, and if this is an unfair question, feel free to just say, you know, get back to you. But are you anticipating that that number will probably increase or decrease between now and when we get to final budget adoption?
I would anticipate, if you're looking at the expense numbers right now,
Yeah.
I would anticipate they will grow because you will add some stuff back.
Yeah.
I just don't know the level that you will add it back at, but it'll grow, but not significantly. And some of the internal service funds or the special revenue funds, those will, I anticipate grow also. For example, REAP 1, REAP 2, you may say,
right.
hey, we want to use some of REAP 1 for X, Y, and this project over here. Well, that's going to increase my expenses.
Okay.
And right now, none of the capital construction funds have any budget assumptions in them,
Right.
just because we haven't planned kind of far enough through what we'll add on and then what kind of where current projects will be going into
Okay.
And,
25. So
and
that
to the
piece will be
extent
increasing.
there is any, like, for example, the 3 million for the ballpark, we haven't put that in the budget yet. That's going to be a rollover item because long ball only put in 5 so far, so we've only put in 5. We still have a credit for the additional 3.
Okay, thank you.
But those are sitting in the reserve.
But they're sitting in reserves, exactly. But it's going to increase our budget amount by those amounts because we'll plan it again for next year, assuming. But yes, they're sitting in reserve.
Yeah. So it's not.
It's not, yeah, it'll be,
So as we look-
that's going to be one of those, it's a use of fund balance because we'd already had it sitting in,
Right,
it's a technical use of fund.
but it's not unassigned. fund
No.
balance, It's a reserve.
It's, yes, that
balance.
is correct.
It's-
It is already reserved in the fund balance.
Thank you.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Mike, are you speaking on behalf of?
Jason is on his way.
Oh.
Should be a tall guy in a uniform, maybe.
Yeah. Back on track. There he is.
Two tall people, well, one in a uniform, one not.
Balance it out.
You guys kind of balance. So this is Jason Robinson and it's Aaron Anderton from the jail. Don is on vacation, he's in Europe, right?
That's right, Ireland.
For Ireland. For a couple of weeks, so he asked that I would introduce these two. Some background and they'll get more detailed on it. We've been utilizing K9 for a long time to come into the jail to contraband detection. One of the things I was asked before, they made the presentation is whether or not our sheriff's office had capacity to help out in that, and they do not. So that's why I said, go ahead and come forward today. We can talk about those, but it's open to any questions that you have. So go ahead, Jason.
So I think you guys remember, I've been before you before talking about similar topics like body scanners and contraband detection. So the dogs are just part of that. They're one component, not one solution works for contraband. It's a multi-purpose approach to the body scanners, the mail processes, the canines are all designed to address our drug problem. You guys know, you hear about it all the time. Fentanyl issues is like not community right now. And as you guys know, jails are just microcosms of our community. So the community has a fentanyl problem, I guess we have fentanyl. So the dogs, we went through RFP last year for services. We selected the Smith Pack. They're designed for Geiger and for the jail for common area searches, perimeter searches, vehicle searches. Just anywhere that we have our offenders, we bring the canines in to be used to help detect the drugs or to at least a deterrent. That's the biggest component of this is the deterrent factor. Nothing stirs up the inmate population than we're looking for drugs. We have intel all the time about drugs in our facilities. We also have a lot of intel of everybody trying to figure out how do we defeat the dogs. So they know that the dogs are a powerful component to our drug detection arsenal. So one of the things is when we went for contract, this is actually a 17-month contract, not a 12 month. So that kind of is what's prompting us to come before you to ask for just a little bit more money to get us through that 17 months. Ends in December, and then we have the capacity for 3 one-year additional contract cycles with Smith Pack. But we use them for on-call capacity. So if we have intel or we have a CRT exercise or information that there's drugs within our facility, we have an on-call capacity with Smith Pack, and we also have a schedule. I guess it's kind of a misnomer. A schedule random searches that really we bring the dogs into. Actually, they're out at Geiger right now. Just coincidentally, we have a cycle with us. You guys know Geiger's for us as far as this contraband between the work crews, between compound, and for things to be thrown over the fence. We keep a pretty tight recurring schedule for bringing the dogs out and searching our housing units. So on-call rate is $150 per team. So one thing about Smith Pack is they offer us a lot of capacity because they have multiple teams. And for example, one of our, in addition to fentanyl, we have a Suboxone problem also. We've been into contract with Smith Pack. They did not have a dog that did Suboxone, but in quick order they trained a dog and got a dog certified for Suboxone for us. So that was how Johnny on the spot they were as far as meeting our needs. And they also do have they have a capacity. They have a firearms dog. They have a comfort dog. They have capacity for other things in addition to just the drug dogs that we have access to. Obviously, the dog does the searching or it does the alerting, and then the staff does the search of the area. So the dog alerts in an area, and we as staff members go in and search and try to find whatever the items have. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Sorry, that was kind of a data dump. But we're averaging about $3,800 a month between the two facilities. We are advocates for this. We have used other canine services in the past. It's back, my experience has been the most responsive, the most flexible. They bring in multiple teams. The dogs can only work for a short duration before they get exhausted. So we have multiple teams, bring in that second team, keep the exercise going. Anyway, sorry for the data dump. Any questions?
I appreciate it because I think I was one of the ones that had questions on, you know, with the body scanners, do we need the dogs? And if with the sheriff's office having dogs, you know, can they use them as well, just as a means of looking at, you know, how do we deal with our budget as we move forward and all of that. And so I got my questions answered. You know, so I appreciate that, you know, the sheriff's dogs aren't quite set up to do this, you know, on a rotating basis and all of that. So I think for me, I mean, I understand the need, you know, as you know, we worked hard to get those body scanners in. So I was kind of making, you know, seeing is there a scanner out there at Geiger, you know, versus downtown, and so knowing they're both.
I was just gonna say, can I address that real quick, because this might help you understand the whole process. So what happens when we bring these dogs in is we'll go up and search a floor, and they'll go on cell to cell and they'll alert on something. In some cases, we find something right away, but what we do is we alert on that cell and then they search the cell, but they take the inmate, and then we go down and but then we body scan that inmate, because a lot of times they get things after they've been initially scanned and come in the building. So we go scan them again. If we see something, we search them, we'll try to get a drug test on them, and at the same time, their cells being searched. And so what we found is we've been able to find contraband both in the cell and on the individual when we do that second body scan later on. And these things kind of all work together. This particular group is the first time that we've had canines that we think have actually worked. When they first came in, it was hard for me to get the jail guys to start using them, because we were all very skeptical. We've used the sheriff's office, SPD, Phoenix, all different groups come in. They never find anything. It's a waste of time. And this group was actually finding stuff. They bring in multiple dogs. They rotate them out. They're very professional. And we were catching people and we're charging them and we're getting the drugs out of our facility. And while it's not the only thing, it's the body scanners, it's the dogs, it's the additional rounds and things that we're doing. But since we've started pushing these at the beginning of this year, these searches downtown of the jail, it's significantly cut back on our overdoses. I would never promise that there won't be any more, because you just can't stop everything. But part of that overall process, it's been very valuable in helping us keep people safe.
Very good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Any other questions?
Well, I was just gonna say, I appreciate you speaking to trying to reduce the overdose, because we don't, you know, we want to do everything we can. There's a risk and a liability around that, so this helps lessen that risk and also kind of hold everybody accountable. You notice that these dogs, that the inmates are paying more attention to, oh, they're finding stuff. Okay, it's good. So that's a good deterrent.
A little trick they do too that has helped in the times that they don't find stuff. They will, when the inmates aren't paying attention, they'll plant something and have a dog find it, so that they see them find something in a common area. They do that as well. And so that they're, because we know there's probably drugs on every single floor all the time. You try to catch what you can. But if they think these dogs are catching people all the time, then they're really hesitant.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it. I think it's great information for us to have and to know.
Hold down the fort.
Yeah,
We'll do so.
thank you. Okay, it's gonna take us to Matt's report.
Good morning.
Matt.
Everybody had a good long weekend. Tuesday kind of surprised me this morning. Myself for remembering to come over. Well, on from the boring world of drugs and jails, into the exciting world of traffic.
Exactly. It makes you better, doesn't it?
It's like, I'll start with the bridges. And this is actually a nice one. This is removing weight restrictions from bridges, which is always something we love to do. That means things have got better. This first one, next slide, please, Ron, is Cheney Spokane Road Bridge. And if you're familiar with it, it's a very high arch bridge that goes over all the railroad tracks just near Marshall. And it's a very old bridge, and we had it hosted, which has been a challenge because if you look on kind of the north side of that aerial, those are big pits and asphalt plants and a lot of traffic that would like to come this direction. And we had paid our on-call structural engineering firm Sargent to reanalyze this bridge. They did a deep dive into the load rating that's required by the state that generates the postings. And we're actually able to remove all the postings after they looked at the bridge more closely from a structural perspective. So that was kind of a win for us. We didn't have to spend too much and we're able to remove these postings, which will free up all that heavy truck traffic to go this direction. Not just forcing them up Grove, which is good once it opens.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's this one. Next one is Little Spokane Road Bridge. This is the one we're building right now. This is the one currently in construction. We're just, since we were running through a round of these removals, we just lumped it in because once we obviously open the road, it will be not posted anymore. It's our new bridge. Next one. This one is Connor Road Bridge. This is the one that our crews performed the replacement on this year. It was another one of those that our bridge crew did for us and saved us a lot of money on. So we're always super proud and pleased when they do that. And again, we're just removing the weight restrictions on Connor. Happy to answer any questions on that.
Are we still using the same I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Are you still using the same technique with regard to the bridges that we build? You know, with the buttresses on each end and span deck over the top of it?
You know, I'm not a structural.
Okay.
I don't even play one on TV, but yeah, our bridge, we tend to go to the same types of bridges. We tend to try and single span both for habitat reasons. We're getting pushed that direction. And also it just easier construction. So most of our bridges turn to be single span, you know, abutments, diaphragm pours, just normal truss technology that we can get out easily with trucks and place with 2 cranes. So there's a practical aspect to bridge design of making sure that it can reasonably be accomplished in cost-effective ways. But yeah, that's pretty traditional. This is the same. Our new one on Little Spokane and the next one we have programmed are all the exact same bridge basically in terms of how they're being built.
So for the new commissioners, the crews actually do a really good job. And not only in terms of reducing construction costs, but also reducing construction time and stuff. And so the bridges that they build and stuff are not only sound, but they're going to last for a long time. Where, you know, before we were in a constant repair kind of a situation, these things are built to last longer than all of us combined.
Yeah, you know, they program them for a 50+ year life and we see almost double that typically. And they do a good job maintaining it too. And we have an inspection program. They're on a cycle. We inspect them annually or semi-annually and they last a long time. And then we can do preventative things and deck repairs and different things to make sure they last that long. Been a really good program. And really our crews are always addressing, we've talked about this before, 20 feet or less is not eligible for federal funding. So all those short span bridges, large diameter culverts, we're attacking with our crews because it's all county dollars. There's no MAP, there's no Fed dollars available for those. And then the larger ones like Little Spokane, we're getting grant funding from the programs. And usually it's 100% program money too. So they're really good. But yeah, our crews, I mean, if we were to put this Connor out to contract, it would likely be 600 to 750 and we can accomplish it for 200 to 300 is a typical range. So we're less than half in general, but they're very short spans too. You know, there's a limitation on what our crews can do. If it gets very big, it gets a little out of our realm. But great program.
And there's a lot of them within the county.
Oh,
It's pretty amazing I'm incorporating to forget how many of these little bridges we have out there that are important for farm to market, getting agricultural products, you know, to grain silos. Just yeah.
Yeah, the really scary part is we have no idea how many are out there. That's why we've been working the last couple of years to develop an inventory, so we even know what we're looking at and can get ahead of it. When we get reactionary, it costs so much more money. If we have to react and it's a major road or even semi-major and we have to get on it immediately, you pay, we'll pay 50 or 75% more, even doing it with our crews compared to if we have it programmed and have those dollars set aside and have the crew there. We're doing more and more with the foundations to get too deep into the weeds here, but we're just looking at every angle we can to do more of the work ourselves, save those monies for we can. And it's a good segue too into the stormwater discussion coming after my couple of topics here, because what we're really hoping to do is in rural areas, expand the stormwater service area and then provide that funding back into the road department so we can address this issue of large dam or culvert, short span bridges, ditching, all those items that we aren't addressing currently, developing programs. I mean, there's a lot of things we could do with additional funds out in the road. Yeah, any other questions on that one? Okay, next one is some establishments. This is kind of a smorgasbord. Next slide. The first one is up on the South Hill. In the aerial, you can see it's on the South Hill by the vicinity map. That's Freya and 57th there, kind of in the bottom corner for our new roundabout. If you've driven that, that's really nice. I drove that this weekend. It turned out really good. Really pleased with both the construction and our inspection on that one. That's a beautiful roundabout. But you can see we're establishing the red line there, Thor Street. This is kind of an odd one. It was actually built in the late 90s. Oddly enough, Kevin Cook, when he was at Century West, designed it before he even came to the county. That's how long ago this all happened. But anyway, we're just cleaning up. This one's getting established. There were some construction deficiencies, so it got held up and it just never came to fruition. So we're just basically cleaning up and getting this one on the books. We might as well take care of it anyway.
So did they have asphalt back then?
Barely. It was more like stones and oil than
Yeah.
asphalt, but yeah, back in the day. Next one is 33rd Court. And you can see this is also out in the valley there. That's Sullivan and 32nd, kind of at the west edge of the aerial there. And this is a new subdivision that's going in. This is the first phase of it. It was a cluster development. This is actually rurally zoned. So the most they can do is a cluster of urban density lots, but there'll be more to come on this one. And we wanted these roads public. There's future options we're looking at for maybe running a public road through this area and tying up into Saltese, which is running along the kind of the north side of that blue line there. Next one. This is Bell Road, and this is just a small infill connection piece in the Morningside area. It's just that little piece of red line that connects up there. You can see the blue line is the outline of the actual plat. So they were just adding a few lots on a driveway back and behind in the common area. So they needed this connection, but it makes a nice connection back into the valley for the neighborhood too. Next one. Pasadena Meadows, if you're familiar with where Pasadena Elementary is, this is just right by it. It's an infill project. We wanted this portion public because it makes a kind of an alternate route to upriver that's more local access and quieter. Obviously, trying to get kids to school on a quieter road than upriver is always a good thing. Next slide. Selkirk and Selkirk Estates Court. This is off of Chapman Road, kind of off Barker there. And they're getting that area pretty filled in. That's Turtle Creek to the north that you can see, and then the newer plats to the south. Just as a side note, we're getting quite a bit of the frontage built along Chapman Road finally, which is, I think some of you might have been hearing from the neighbors out there occasionally that they'd like something on Chapman that they can walk up and down to get to park or just take walks basically. So a lot of that's getting built in the next year or two with the few remaining subdivisions that are occurring along Chapman. So we're getting there on that. Happy to answer any questions.
Just lots of development going on out there.
Yes, there is. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Morning.
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 Ben Bradabo, Water Programs, and Bill Galley and Krista Riley here as well to talk to you today about requesting an increase in the stormwater management service charge. This is similar to what we did about a year ago. It was is requesting $5 per equivalent residential unit increase for next year. And this is really building off of the rates which are presented up there, which were set in 2007 and then weren't increased until last year. $5 increase for the various zones, and then our proposed is for a $5 increase for next year. And this is part of a study that we're doing, looking at our stormwater service area rates. The description in there, the small bullet in there is we're doing a rate study that is ongoing. Plan to finish it this year with the presentation to the board in spring of 2025. But what we'll likely recommend is a rate increase. And so this is that stepping into that so that it's not a large increase when it finally comes around. But also expanding the service area, as Matt Zarecor just mentioned, and then restructuring of the special service area fees. So right now there's one is the standard rate, and then there's 3 special service area fees. And it's likely that will change. Potentially that will go away. We'll move to a simpler rate structure. A big part of the fee is covering requirements under the NPDES permit, which was reissued in August of this year. And there's a lot of work that has to happen inside the NPDES service area. And then outside of that is that potentially an expansion to do more work on culverts and ditching and managing stormwater outside of our NPDES service area. So we're trying to combine all of those together. So with this as a request to put a resolution to go out for public comment and have a hearing for a $5 increase. The next slide shows where we stand compared with others. And what this shows is that there's at each tier within the county system, the green one on the left is the lowest. And so we still continue to be low compared with our other jurisdictions within within Eastern Washington. The orange, blue, and gold are the special service areas that are a bit higher. So it shows after the original last year's plus this year's where that will end up putting those, if that's approved. Any questions on
that? That cost is an annual cost, right, to the property owners?
It is. It's actually presented as a monthly cost, but it's times 12. And but yes, it is one time per year on their statement on their tax statement. Yes.
So their property tax, correct? And so that is just can be done at the commissioner level.
Yes, it can, and it will be there'll be a public hearing to describe that, and we'll have an opportunity to present this similar information at that hearing. Yeah. The final, or
would next year be the decision on the map for the area?
It will. So we're putting together a rate study that'd be to present that to you in the spring of next year. And this is the current stormwater service area boundaries, and you see the yellow is the basic rate, and then there's red there to the south, orange at the north, and then the purple is NPDES. So there's all these differing requirements that are having to happen in the different stormwater service areas. So ideally, we'll simplify them in our new rate structure. Some of them may go down. So what this increase, the folks at the high end may end up having a reduction in their assessments when this is implemented.
So I guess, one of the things to, seeing less, lower than a lot of other counties, but what exactly, I guess to know why we need to increase the rates, would be seeing kind of that income statement to know why we need to.
We will, and so it's looking out, the study is looking out to Krista. I'm sorry, it shows a rate capital improvement plan showing what projects we need to do looking out into the future, and that'll be part of that presentation for the final rate study. On this one, and maybe is that your question for why we need a rate increase right now?
Yeah, why are we asking for the rate increase?
Oh, thank you. So if you go back a slide.
Yes, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
on.
so it's really it's the NPDS permit requirements, increased costs and maintenance, and then increased construction costs that we're seeing in all of our projects. Sorry if I'm missing your question.
Well, so I guess, I mean, that tells me it, kind of in general, but from a financial standpoint, I guess if I'm gonna go ask for another $5, I wanna see what the financial facts are
Sure.
to it. So it's, putting that into a financial statement that's gonna show me that the need is there.
Okay.
I mean, I get, yes, costs are all increasing, but I'm not, it's not showing me how much per year is really coming in for each of these areas and how much we're spending. Plus, I'm assuming we're probably spending more than that in some of these areas that it's not, we're using them. I don't know if we're using dollars or combining those dollars with other dollars to make these things happen.
Right. We have those numbers, and so I don't have them here today to present,
Okay.
but
Got some from.
We've recently been taking on a lot of projects, mainly dealing with groundwater, not necessarily stormwater, but water's water.
Right.
So those groundwater problems have caused us a lot of additional costs for projects that we didn't use to cover. So we're covering those now, and those are pushing us out over $1 million. We also have, it's basically those programs, the additions of the NPDS requirements, we're having to do a lot more inspections than we used to do, so that's additional staff time. That's all they're working on now. And a couple other items that are coming to. It's really the additional cost of that. We're also looking at taking on the street sweeping cost under the stormwater utility, because it's more of a street sweep, it's more of a stormwater function than it is the other, the road department. So that's an additional cost of stormwater utility when we cover under our budget.
In just a second, Commissioner Kearns, I'll go to you in just a second. So what is when we say increased NPDES permit requirements, who is that?
I mess it up every time. This is 3 columns, just the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System.
Okay. So it's federal requirements that are.
It's a state requirement that is required by the feds to the state, to us.
It's basically how we're required to deal with stormwater in that boundary. So that was that purple boundary up there. So that's, how we're maintaining our structures, how often we have to inspect them, that type of thing. Education and outreach. If there's a spill, how are we responding to that type of thing?
Okay.
this is it's the same permit that we have for wastewater treatment plants, but it's developed for dispersed pollutants, so neighborhoods and streets, the pollution's coming off of that, which are more difficult to manage than just a point source that has a pipe into the river.
Thank you. Commissioner Kearns, you had raised your hand.
Yeah, I think most of what I was going to ask what was answered, but I guess so the purple would essentially be on your table the remainder of overall stormwater service area. Is that if I'm using the color codes correctly? Is that correct?
Commissioner, it's actually the yellow is the remainders, and which includes the purple, and the purple is where the NPDS boundary is. So it's yellow and purple are the same fee.
Okay. Yeah. Yellow and purple are, so if Ron, can you click up to the table 2 slides back? Okay, so I mean, Glen Rose had a color. North Spokane was the orange. West Plains, I think, had its color. Glen Rose, I think, was red on the map. North Spokane was orange. So the remainder of overall service area, that price, that's the yellow and purple, or both would pay the 31. Is that correct? Am I reading the map correct?
That's correct, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? So then this would come up.
So
it'll get a notice for public hearing on our agenda.
Correct.
And then we would have a public hearing on it and raising those rates.
That's correct.
So.
What's the timing in terms of when the rates would go into effect?
2026. So if you guys approved them in next year, they would go to It's like 2026.
No, sorry, so they would go into effect for this $5 increase, would go
Oh,
into
sorry,
effect for,
yes,
for, in
2025.
January.
January, okay, thank you.
So we have to do this process before November to get it onto the tax rolls.
Correct.
Everyone understand that? Okay.
In terms of process, there's no advisory committee or anything, it just goes straight to the board for decision after the public hearing. That's correct.
Thank you. It's gonna take us to Tori, you're next.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm here to brief you on two of our state contracts, interagency agreements really for one that funds our BECA program. And these funds come to us through administrative officer reports. So for our BECA program, $1,325,000. And this actually is distributed to Superior Court, Juvenile Court, Prosecutor's Office, Public Defender's Office, Clerk's Office, and Law and Justice. It's all for the purpose of processing BECA petitions. So our at-risk youth, our CHINs, and our truants. And then some case management dollars to serve those kids. And then the other agreement is for our CASA supervisor program. So the state funded part of our CASA program is the one that runs our volunteer program. So that pays for 3 of our staff that supervise and assist on the advocacy of children for our approximately 150 volunteers. And how much is that one? That is 291,000 and some change. 291,324. Is there any more information on those programs?
Yeah.
These are annual, these are every year, come every year, same thing, almost the same amount of money. Yeah, dollars coming to us are based on filings.
Yeah, you guys did a great job with the CASA program, so thank you.
Just wondering how the recruitment of volunteers is going. Is that up, down, or
Well,
any
it
trends?
down, we've cleaned up the numbers. Sometimes you have volunteers and we kept them on the books too long, so we really got that down to 50, maybe a little less than that now. It's picking back up, as you can imagine, after COVID. We lost a lot of volunteers, and then we had some staff turnover, and so a lot of recruitment work goes on there, and they're satisfied with what they're getting for the people that are advocating for the kids. So representation is there. Which is all we want.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of kids, got a exciting grant opportunity here that Chris is going to brief us on regarding the Anchor Communities Initiative with Washington State Department of Commerce's Office of Homeless Youth. So go for it, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. We're here today to brief you on a potential opportunity. Way Home Washington has reached out to the department to potentially sponsor the Anchor Community Initiative position, Anchor Community Initiative Coordinator position to come to Spokane County. For a little bit of background, the youth services, system in Spokane has been kind of struggling with staff turnover, struggling to kind of reduce youth and young adult homelessness in the system for a couple of years now. That's due to a couple of things. And on the slide, you can kind of see the complexity of that system and everyone who's involved with that. A few years ago, Spokane was one of 4 communities to adopt this Way Home Washington funding model. And that was to, of course, bring in these built for zero concepts into this funding model to help reduce youth and young adult homelessness. And that worked out really well. And they were able to make some improvements. They were able to set some data goals and really create this by name list for youth and young adults in the community before this kind of turnover happened, before kind of COVID happened and everything got turned on its head a little bit. So if we go to the next slide a little bit, or I'm sorry, the next slide, please. Over the last 2 years, we've seen those key barriers for youth and young adult homelessness. And the current funding levels, while we are able to fund youth programming, especially from the county, year after year from consolidated homeless grant funding, there's still a need there for additional supplemental funding for a position to come in and do a little extra work or additional work to divert youth from that system. So this coordinator position would be responsible for a couple of different things, but notably improving that system coordination between that complex group of partners that you saw in the previous slide, diverting youth and young adults from becoming homeless in the first place and supporting those current providers who are receiving funding to connect those dots and make sure that we're not duplicating efforts and that we're doing a good job of really consolidating our efforts in one place and reducing hopefully down to zero. Next slide, please. So the proposal here, and this is really what we wanted to talk with commissioners about today, is Spokane County would potentially bring in a project position with Away Home Washington funding that would be responsible for these responsibilities laid out. County would be responsible for hiring the position, bringing them into the department. And Away Home Washington or the ACI would provide that support for that position, utilizing the training and support that all the anchor community initiative sites across the state have, and bringing those all together to hopefully create a good model over that year to see if we can make some progress for 1 year. And then one more slide, please. This will just kind of outline, I think, the timeline of what we're looking at. So this would be just a one FTE, mostly funded by Away Home Washington. If we were to do something like this, we'd be looking at a project start date of about January 1 for about a year to see what kind of progress we can make in youth and young adult homelessness, for a project end date around December 2025. We'd evaluate this funding around September 2025 to see if it's something that we should continue pursuing, if we're making substantial improvements over those margins. And of course, in the interim, making sure that we're making progress along the way. This position would also do a really good job of informing the Housing and Community Development Advisory Committee on youth programs that are proposed in March 2025 RFP time. Other than that, we just wanted to brief the board and potentially gather any support for legislative item approval of accepting a contract with Away Home Washington for $50,000. The remaining funds would of course be covered from the Consolidated Homeless Grant. We'd be working with Commerce to make sure that's allowable, and I believe that's it.
I think two things I wanted to point out in addition to what Chris has said is we receive a significant amount of funding to support all sorts of homeless interventions through this department. One thing that we don't have a great handle on is a triage approach, particularly as it relates to youth and young adults. And so this position is really going to be able to step in and provide that communication and connection between our McKinney-Vento liaisons at the school districts, through our service providers, through our funders, through the Board of County Commissioners, and really kind of get a good handle on everything that's going on. Because right now we're experiencing a lot of everyone's doing a little bit of something. And that's part of what's made this Anchor Community Initiative really, when it was initially piloted, such a successful system, is that it was really bringing everyone to the table and doing greater coordination and collaboration. So really excited about that opportunity to be able to present, inform. The state provides a tremendous amount of resources through this as well. So we'll have good, as Chris mentioned, technical assistance along the way. And really we see this, again, reiterating Chris's point, this is a pilot to see, does this work being housed at the county for a period? I think this is unique because the city of Spokane housed it initially. And then the United Way has housed it.
And it's just never really, aside from its first kind of ramp up, it's never really found a strong home. And we like the idea of it being housed with the county, because then we got a better regional approach when we start thinking about all the different school districts and everything. So we feel like it's a really good fit, but we also want to test and pilot it and make sure that it's something that has sustainability long term.
Sorry, I missed this, but if you assess or evaluate in September and recommend that it continues, would we then apply for another state fund from Commerce to continue?
Yes, sir. So the grant funding is actually through Away Home Washington. It's a mix up of private dollars. And so this is not a grant application that we've been applying for. It's almost like if you guys are willing to do this, then here's the funding. So we would probably kind of re-up for continued funding there. They've explained that the funding is relatively consistent and that they have no concerns moving forward. But we, of course, want to be conservative in our approach and make sure that it's a good fit for us for that first year. Thank you.
I guess for me, what I'd like to see is, the question that Ben brought up earlier is what's the real cost for everything? So what's, so just the ability that $50,000 is coming from the state is fine, but that's not a full-time position.
Sure.
So what is the county's portion, benefits, all of that? Yes, they do that in line within community services with you guys. So I want to see kind of that breakdown to then see how we fund that for the future.
Yeah.
So, because I think when, during COVID, a lot of these, when we were getting these funds, I mean, we, city of the Valley, the county, the city of Spokane, we dedicated those to VOA because they're the ones really doing a lot of those services. I don't think we have. So I guess I kind of want to know too, then how is that working? I mean, is it better for us to be doing it? I mean, I guess I didn't know this position existed at the city of Spokane. So I just need more information.
Absolutely. And what I can do is provide, I think, a wrap up of what that funding would look like coming from the county and the different respective funding sources to the commissioners. I can also say too that it's a complex kind of system with the youth funding. And so there are additional positions funded by ACI or Away Home Washington. I believe there's a youth and young adult coordinator that's being housed at the Spectrum Center. So that's one position funded by Away Home Washington. This would be a separate position that's supposed to coordinate with that position, as well as VOA, who gets a lot of Office of Homeless Youth dollars kind of into them. So this is kind of this core team. The county would be rounding out that kind of last pillar in that suite of services. So I can absolutely kind of break down where those key players are as well and what this position does to feed into all those.
Right. Yeah. I think that's what, I would need to know is how. Yes. Because what I don't want to do is have us spending more money on a full-time person that takes away from the service needs that we have out there. So that's what I'm trying to be cognizant of is building a kind of good more government and not giving the services out to the people that need it. So because it's the kids are at that vulnerable stage of coming out of foster care, not having places, I know that's a lot of our youth homeless. And so how is this helping?
So I'm remembering back, George, was it 2017? That there was, or right around that time, 18, that we had that first push from the state to try and get as many youth housed as possible or get to zero.
That was a 100-day challenge.
Yeah. And I think we were the only community that actually made the challenge.
Yep.
In the 100 days, but it took all these different, disparate organizations and entities that all had different funds, but we're all kind of serving different youth or maybe the same youth, but we weren't getting the results. So the point of what I'm hearing you say is that kind of fell away a little bit during the pandemic. I remember meeting with some youth outreach folks right around 2019, 2020, when I was at the Zone Project at the community center. There seemed to be a lot of people out there doing stuff, and then did it kind of just go quiet a bit during the pandemic, the 2020-21.
Yeah, the city had a great employee, Matt Davis.
Yeah.
Who was really the lead on all things youth homelessness. And so he had that passion, he was really integrated into the system, so he was able to make a lot of those connections that made the initial pilot so successful. Matt's now with the Office of Homeless Youth at the state level. He's still local, but when he left, a lot of the energy and everything that he was really ushering kind of went away with it at that time. So looking to reignite that. And ultimately, functional zero is what we're trying to get, which was part of that 100-day challenge. And so being able to create the by names list and coordinate that effectively to really get those youth, kind of the upstream model, if we can get those kids rapidly their situation resolved or find some remedy for it, then we can alleviate some of the pressure of what's going into the system right now, because that's a big part of our growing homeless population.
So I agree with what Chair Cuny was saying about just understanding the whole cost would be great. But I'm very supportive of, as long as the other entities, the nonprofits, the city are all behind the county kind of taking on this coordinator role. I think it's, that was the only way everyone got organized like 7 years ago to house all those youth in 100 days. And I think we just kind of need to regroup around that, because it's not to say that VOA isn't doing good work and other agencies, but they're just one piece of the puzzle. And I think we're probably like having a list, a by name list. You can get youth, if everyone's focused on this list and getting those youth housed as soon as possible, as long as you think everyone's gonna play together and work together, I think it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. Yep. Totally agree.
So I can provide some of that information this week as well.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have Collins, Mr. Haskell. We can change chairs. Welcome. Good morning. So this is, I'm assuming, a continuation of our discussion last week. And Colin, you're welcome to come up to the table.
I was fine in the back as well.
The honor chair.
We sat across the aisle a lot.
Right. Okay.
It's like being at council table now, aren't it?
Well, I'm gonna just state that I didn't have anyone comment on anything during the week. So I did just say, just put it at step 6 on the agenda, because I think it's on tomorrow's agenda at step 6. Because I didn't hear back from any other commissioners.
This afternoon.
Yes. Because last week we asked them to go ahead and put a resolution in. So I'm just letting you know that came from me. So at least we had something in there. So we can so it's on the consent agenda this afternoon, but I think we still have questions. We can always strike it if we need to, but I think making changes now, we'd have to do by leave. That be correct if we make changes.
Yes, that's correct.
So there we go. I just wanted to start with that so you knew where, and the commissioners all knew where that kind of all came from.
And I guess the main thing that I have is if there are questions that we're able to answer that haven't been answered, happy to do that. Step 6 is reflective of what, Ms. Cameron had told us we should be at a year ago. And again, that was a year ago before all these other counties moved things even further up. And so, again, we're kind of in the position where we're scrapping for the thing that a year ago we said wasn't enough. But if that's what the board's prepared to do today, frankly, we will take anything we can and continue to try to attract folks and do whatever advanced step hires we can.
At this skill point for new employees, it's just hard to do advanced steps because they're starting at zero. And so we don't have a lot to justify saying, you know, if you're coming in the door at step 6, which is 73,000, you know, do I have a basis to ask for a step 2 or a step 3? And as we've been doing, you know, between both offices, you know, asking for those advanced steps, that in and of itself at times tends to be a bit of a dogfight too, which takes time. But again, we put the numbers out here, you know, we've given a comparison of the other counties. And I suspect that if, you know, obviously not a suspect, I know that if we aren't able to attract entry-level applicants at whatever point the board chooses, we're going to be coming back saying, hey, this isn't working. You know, what else can we do? But at a minimum, this moves us up, you know, $10,000 from where we were, which really, what, a month and a half ago, we were at, I think, 59,000, but for the transition to the 40-hour work week. That's kind of where we're at right now.
And the step 6 would be a brand new lawyer. Is everybody on the same page of that? A brand new lawyer out of law school, no particular experience. So what I don't want to do is somehow foreclose an opportunity to petition for, you know, dependent on experience and that sort of thing, a little bit of a higher wage, and so that it's very clear that you know, we can sometimes call them a new penny, but a new lawyer would enter at a step 6, and then look at the experience level and have a discussion with human resources following that about, you know, if they have a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it may be, a comparable experience. So, but no, I don't want to fail to appreciate, first of all, the board's time in listening to us. I feel like a regular, like, you know, everybody knows my name at this bar, so to speak. But it's a very important discussion, and again, consistent with the stated objective and goal of the county for public safety. This is something that is going to allow us, I hope, at this point, to move the needle enough where we can get some relief, because we just haven't been able to get any so far. So my thanks to the board members for having the patience, hearing and seeing the numbers and deciding that, you know, something needs to be done. And I appreciate that very much. And I know my entire office would echo my voice.
Thank you. So I have 3 questions. So I don't know if you guys want me to go or anybody else wants to go first.
I could jump in. That's
Sure.
okay. One of the questions I asked last week was the cost for next year, basically, and I appreciate Randy got me that in greater clarity. Looking at the prosecutor's office plus the other attorney positions, and it sounds like it would be between 208 or 211,000 ish, roughly, kind of depending on, you know, filled positions, and COLAs, et cetera. So that was good to understand that. And then I think the second piece is how to pay for, and it sounds like there's enough budget to pay for it this year, and then maybe we continue that discussion into the regular budget process. But anyway, that's my follow-up from last week. So
Yeah, no. So I guess, you know, I'm trying to just at least get us to some salary, you know, determination. So that was my point. Normally these things don't come to the Board of County Commissioners, correct, Scott? Normally if step changes happen, it's not through the county commissioners. So I guess I'm hoping that if we see the need to have a change in step, that step is not enough, that this can be taken care of beyond the county commissioners, not have to come back to us again. So, because I think we're all saying, no, we need to do something. And so this is our first next step at that. The first step was getting to the 40-hour work week. This is the next step. So I'm hopeful that in the future, the prosecutor's office and HR can work out changes, knowing that we're all supportive of getting people in the door. And that, you know, I think Commissioner Walter talked about last time, is that a sign-on bonus, so I'm hoping those discussions can happen, not at the Board of County Commissioner level. So the second thing is, we talked about step 6 versus just having everyone start at attorney 2. Is that, how long would someone go from being an attorney 1 to becoming an attorney 2? Because it sounded like it was just getting through kind of their almost like probationary period, or just getting enough experience to get them to that. So
typically, when they come in new, they're gonna work in district court. And the length of time varies depending on the needs at the felony level for one, as well as some people pick up the curve, if you will, a lot quicker and easier than others. Some people need a little more seasoning. So when they're ready, it's determined not only by the district court supervisor, but also the chief criminal deputy. Then we move them up to felonies, and then we move them to a step.
And I think on average, and it's hard to quantify that just based on when folks leave, and if you're moving somebody up sooner than perhaps you otherwise would have, but I'd say on average for the prosecutor's office, 1 to 3 years, potentially. So to get from that step 1 to the step 2. And so ideally, we would have people in district court for at least a year before they move to felonies. We've been in a position now where we're moving up at a faster rate. Historically, I know that a decade ago, we had people that were in district court for 3 to 5 years at a time. That's not the case right now. And so they are moving up quicker. So I'd say 1 to 3 years. So we had, the last group that we matriculated up to felonies, frankly, was sooner than ideal, but it was just out of need that we did it.
no, okay, I appreciate that. So then I think I'm still comfortable having the attorney 1 position and not just eliminating that, because it seems like there is a purpose of that for that training. If they're in district court versus then getting to felony court. So it just solidifies in my mind that I'm happy having an attorney 1 position still, even though we made that step, may need to change. And then my last question is kind of with the other attorneys in the county, with the PDs. I think you guys were looking at the policies and the RCWs and all of that. If we change the prosecutor's office, which is a non-rep group, do the counsel for defense and the public defenders then automatically get to that same level?
I think the mechanism is different. And so in terms of automatically, and then again, I'll let Colin speak for himself, but automatically no, because the way that the language, I believe the MOUs that are executed by the county read is that for non-repped, if there's another non-repped and there's a change to, for instance, our office, then CFD would get moved automatically, right? Because they're non-repped and they don't have a labor agreement there. This doesn't affect CFD at all because they don't have attorney 1s. So it only affects the public defender's office. And so in this case, I think it would be, necessarily need to either open up or do MOU with the labor organization that's at issue here. And that would be something that I think is already kind of written into the contract language, that if there is going to be an addendum during a contract cycle, that they're obliged to engage in that process moving forward. So at least that's my thoughts, but I'll defer to Colin.
That's accurate, Commissioner. It's a similar process in my mind to what we did with the 40-hour work week, right? It was an MOU with the union and understanding, because there is that joint resolution that essentially says, yes, but for the representation, we would make exactly what the prosecutor's office would make, right? And for practical purposes, as I said back in that meeting, there needs to be parity there. If there's not, we directly compete for those attorney positions, right? With counsel for defense, with the prosecutor's office. So there has to be that in my mind for the whole system to work. So yes, I think practically it needs to go there. The process, though, technically, I think is a little different. I think we would have to do an MOU. I've already met with the union on the subject. I believe they're in favor of it. Their primary concern with any of the proposal we've made is to make sure that the current members that are paid a certain level and attorney ones that are currently attorney ones aren't basically, you know, for lack of a better term, leapfrogged, right? So that there's not a new attorney right out of law school all of a sudden making more money than an attorney that's been in our office for 1, 2, 3 years. So, but we've done the math on that. I don't think it's would be a substantial increase. Obviously, HR would need to do its analysis, do its calculations. But yeah, I think.
And today, how many attorneys are public defenders down and how many attorneys for the people's office down?
We're down 9.
And I believe we're at, with the 4 that are not quite, that are still awaiting bar results. Counting those, assuming that they passed, right? We would be down 9 combined with civil and criminal, but on the criminal side, we're down 5. And as it relates to leapfrogging, we won't have that issue in part because everybody, as soon as we brought on these 4, everybody that we could move up to felonies, we're in that process and move them up. So they're all going to be kind of similarly situated. And ideally, as we get new folks in, we're able to keep them in district court a little bit longer to gain that experience. So I don't believe that we would have a leapfrogging issue with the prosecutor's office, but I could see, you know, if you have somebody that's been in there for a year or 2, and then you get the new law grad coming in, making higher than their step 6, you know, the other person that's a step 1 or 2, you know, would be an issue. Obviously, for the 4 that we have in the chair right now that are waiting bar results, they would be moved from a step 1 to a step 6, and then they would be on par with anybody incoming after that.
Any other questions or comments?
Is my statement accurate? I think you spoke to this before, that at least on the prosecutor side, there's a sufficient salary savings this year to cover any increase.
Yeah, there's no clawback. There'll be no general fund impact on this year. And if we were allowed to roll over that money, most likely neither for 2025 and possibly neither for 2026 as well. If the money's taken away, then there would be an impact for 2024. There would be the remainder. As we previously, some of the slides that we had previously given the board, that would kick in if the money were taken away.
But that also assumed current staffing levels. So if there is going to be a cut,
obviously that changes.
Right. So the reflection, you know, of that amount is positioned people. So if there is going to be that, I mean, obviously that's kind of a discussion for not too much farther down the road. But regardless of whether or not there's going to be a cuts to positions, it doesn't change what the need for that starting salary is. Right. And so, you know, whether ideally in our position will be, we need all of our lawyer positions. But if for some reason we didn't have them all, that starting salary still has to be at a certain level where we can compete and try.
Still want to track.
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Kurtz.
Yeah, thank you. So when we have been discussing budget this year, I'm just going to throw out, you guys were just talking about potential cuts. So say you are held flat, you are given the same amount of money for your department that you were for 2024 for 2025. Are you going to be able to fill all of your vacant positions with these increases, or will your new fully staffed number have to be lower to accommodate for these higher wages?
We probably have to cut 10 criminal lawyers.
If you're held flat this year to next year with these increases, you would have to reduce 10 to pay for it?
Likely, and that's rough numbers, right? So of our entry level attorneys, it'd be somewhere probably 8 to 10. And so, so our vacancy rate, what we have right now, is essentially the amount that winds up on paper as if we were held flat, right? So that's assuming no additional kick in for promotions, COLAs, any of that. We would probably have to effectively reduce 8 to 10 positions out of the, so I have 52 criminal lawyers right now. So we'd be looking at 8 to 10 of those for 2025.
Okay. And so you think that this is the way to proceed down this path then, that the higher wages are a better move for the agency than the numbers?
Well, the flip side of it now is we're effectively being forced to reduce the 8 to 10 presently by being unable to process those cases now because we have a wage that we can't attract lawyers at. And so it's fine, it's being done either way. It's just, which side of the balance sheet it winds up on. So we're already there for 2024, and that we had 9 positions open where we couldn't process, nearly 1,000 cases at a given time. So we've done it for 2024. The question is, how do we do it for 2025? So we could do it as we're presently proceeding, or it may actually be striking out those folks, on the FTE sheet for next year. And I hope we don't obviously get to that point, but we're doing it already. It's just, we're not calling it that.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner, on the public defense side of it, to sort of go along with that, it's slightly different. I know you guys know as we had this conversation before, but we're paying for, we have the vacancies right now. We're also paying for it in the conflict contract side of things, right? So that's part of the 2025 discussion as well. And if we don't fill those vacancies, which hopefully this would help do, then we're still having that problem. The cases are going to have to be, well, the representation is going to be paid for one way or another. You can go the private conflict route, which is more expensive than filling the current openings we have in our office. But obviously that's, I don't think, what we should be doing going forward. But again, hopefully if we can fill those vacancies, there will be some offset, right? There's gonna be offset. I think Preston mentioned last time, or Larry mentioned last time, at the jail, cases will be resolved faster. You'll see savings there. You'll see savings on the conflict side of things. So I think it needs to be done, and hopefully we could fill some of those vacancies. I'll be honest though, I don't think this is going to fill all of our spots. I don't know what Larry and Preston think, but it'll help. I'm hoping get some applicants in the door. And as I've said here about a month ago, our applications have gone down 80% in the last 4 years. So it's not nothing. And of the ones we are getting, half of those aren't qualified. So it's actually more than that, I would say. It's closer to probably 90. So thanks.
So maybe this is an HR question, but on the public defender side, what's the next step then to address that piece?
It would be a decision by the board if they want to enter into an MOU early, just like we did before, because they are part of the community. Otherwise, they're not. Josh, you can correct. I think they're out of, their contract expires the end of this year, middle of next year.
Contract expires June 30th, 2025.
Well, I mean, I guess we could go 2 ways. We can move forward with the step 6. I'm very dubious that we're gonna see a lot more applicants. We'll see a few, because it is a change. But when you looked at that map that I think Wasack put together of all the other counties, it's still, and we're a large county with a lot of cases. We're still gonna be like kind of on the, if not the lowest, on the low end.
Certainly for the workload commission, we will be.
So I'm just, I hear what you're saying, Chair Cooney, about giving it a chance for like 3 months and seeing what it looks like. I would want us to have time to make an adjustment by the end of the year if we needed to do that, before we pass our 2025 budget, if we needed to. So you said that, Randy said it was about 210 for both. So about 100 and something for public defender and the prosecutor's office. Okay. I guess I'm just, I'm willing to go along with that. I do think that like probably a bonus right now isn't the best, because we have people waiting for their bar results that are already hired, and we don't want there to be a discrepancy in what we're paying people coming in the door. But I do think we should have HR look at that. You guys talk with your folks. How could we make that fair if we did have some sort of hiring bonus with those who are already in the door? But right now it doesn't seem to make sense. But I think we should relook at it. And I did get something back from Jeff. I asked the question of like whether we could use, American Rescue Plan money for the next 2 years just to pay for those bonuses. And he thought that was likely a legal source. Oh, there you go. It was just an idea, because I know how tight our budget is. this year and how tight our budget is predicting to be next year. So it's just a thought. But it may not be the right timing right now. So I guess I'm hopeful, I'm willing to support the step 6 if there's a commitment that we can come back at the end of November, beginning of December. And if we need to put something in the budget to address, getting new lawyers in the door, that people are willing to come back and look at that. And maybe it's HR, just coming back with a proposal. Again, I agree. I don't think we need just HR to be suggesting this is how we are gonna hire qualified people to do the work that we need to get done. So I don't know, I just, for the amount of money that maybe a step 7 or 8 would be, we're probably not talking about that much difference. So I just wonder if just doing like a step 7 or 8 at this point would just set us up for success. So, but I'm willing, if the will of the board is to start with 6, I would just want us to revisit at the end of November, beginning of December, before we finalize our 2025 budget. If we need to put some more money in there, because I just don't want us to spend another year trying to start all over again. So those are my thoughts. We could add a little bit more now. Maybe it'd be $250,000 to make it to step 7 or 8. I mean, are we willing to do that to have a better chance of filling these very important positions?
It would, but on the other hand too, a lot of it, Commissioner, is gonna depend on what the board's philosophy is gonna be regarding the proposed implementation of this 2025 budget with the prosecutor's office. And again, I don't want to get too deep in it today because it's not primed quite yet, but it's about $1.5 million, which almost entirely would erase. I don't have a lot of things I can shed other than people. And people is the issue right now. So those will be tough discussions. It reminds me a lot, and go back historically, of the 08-09 timeframe. It was pretty much countywide as far as that goes. I noticed there's a number of departments on a proposed list that was circulated today that will be they will be suffering no budget reductions whatsoever. But there's a couple of departments in particular, the larger ones, the sheriff's office, the prosecutor's office. I don't know about the detention, but those are the things that, basically all they can shed primarily is people. And people are what keep the public safe. And if we're going to prioritize it, and I know you've heard me say it before, it can't be just another competing interest. It's going to have to somehow stick its nose above the water line to have any meaning to it when we talk about public safety and what we're willing to invest and whether or not the agencies are all going to be competing interests regardless of where they fall on the spectrum in terms of the mandatory constitutional type stuff and it's really nice to have these things and it's really nice that we can fund them, but do they deserve the same level of footing that public safety does? So that's a decision for the board to make and a discussion that we'll have in more detail. But if there's no clawback right now with the salary savings that we have, I think our handout is accurate relative to the impact as we would see it at this point in the remainder of 2024, 25, and very possibly 2026.
Just to follow up on the ARP, Heather and I did a little more deep dive on it. We can definitely pay salary and benefits. Bonus, we want to talk to the lawyers. The bonus that we saw was tied to the emergency. We could definitely done it during the COVID emergency. We think there's a pathway, but we'd want to have some legal minds look at it. Another way to do it would be through that 3.2 category, where it'd be ARP back, but we'd move other general fund expenses to the ARP category. So yes, there's a way, but it might not be a direct one for one, just FYI.
Thank you, Jim. Just for the record though, Mr. Haskell, I think the departments that don't show up as having a negative in the proposal, but they've already submitted their cuts.
applies.
That is correct.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Is there any reason from HR's perspective why we wouldn't start the process with public defenders right away in terms of getting that brought up? I'd just be worried that if we hire more prosecutors, we don't have enough public defenders to move the cases along, we're not really addressing any of the backlog issues. So I'm just wondering if we can start it right away. If not, why not?
If that's the commissioner's direction, I can get started on it as soon as the resolution is signed.
I think we should.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to, based on the parity. We're gonna have to look at that, otherwise, yes, they're gonna get the public defenders and they're gonna come over to the prosecutors.
Oh, we've had that happen recently, Commissioner.
I
To add
know.
to that, if we could somehow coordinate the effective dates of both. Josh, I don't know if that's doable. I know there's a little more work on our end, but I'm happy to help with that as far as the union side. That would be ideal.
It would be ideal, but I think based on where we're at, we're gonna have to, they're non-rep and we can just make that happen today versus, you know, there's still a process with them having representation that we've gotta go through. So
I appreciate that, Commissioner, and quite frankly, I think we could do it pretty quickly anyway, so even if it's a couple of days, that's probably.
I would think so. I mean, that's why I asked the question on, you know, how it works with the public defenders, because after our last discussion, when we went to the 40-hour work week, it was things that we needed to make happen. So. We just need to, yeah. And like I said, and I'm not sure that the step 6 is ideal, but I want to just make sure something got done. Because I literally sit here and look at how much we're spending in salaries in this room over the last, since May or March, is ridiculous.
And huge.
I'm just, so I'm kind of done.
And to address your first question, Commissioner, and I just want to be very clear, it was, we don't love coming here and making everybody
No, and
time, because we.
yes, no, it's a collective. I'm not putting any of the blame on anybody. I'm just saying collectively, I don't want to have this happen again. And we have already spent enough time and money on this topic that we need to just be able to move forward quicker and more nimble in the future.
And as it relates to the step, I think we are willing to run forward and to accept whatever step it is that the board decides on. To put it into perspective, our original ask was to change wage grades, which is more complicated, but that would effectively equate to a step 9 or 10. That's originally what we had proposed in our very first presentation, is that attorney 1s be changed to that different wage grade, which if we kept the same scale would be about 9 or 10. But you know, whatever the number chosen is, I mean, we're going to go forward and try to advertise and recruit, do whatever the heck it is we can to get folks in the door, and then report back, you know, if necessary. That's what, you know.
And
what the results
yes, so on the agenda for this afternoon, it is a step 6. But I think you've heard from all the commissioners that if we need to make adjustments, we're willing to do that. But hopefully it doesn't have to come back before us. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts? Thank you. Okay, so I know there's one miscellaneous.
Thank you all.
Thank you. We've got a couple of executive sessions. I know we've got a hard stop, so I'm not sure that we're gonna get to everything. So could we delay the
Yes.
miscellaneous items to this afternoon? Okay, I mean. The Shrills meeting agenda,
Do we need to delay it, or do we need to continue this to this afternoon?
I usually always ask if there's miscellaneous item or.
Okay, I just didn't want to miss the process.
Officially,
If there's an item on the agenda that you want to move, then yeah, I would recommend a formal moving the agenda item, or otherwise you can simply strike it and bring it up.
okay, has everyone looked at the Shrill agenda? Is everyone okay with it? I'm just gonna do head nods.
Yep.
Okay, so then that's taken care of. And then media and press releases, do you guys have stuff that has to be done today or can it wait?
I think it can wait till this afternoon.
Bring that up.
Everyone should have an email from me if you just want to review it and respond to that. That'll be fine. Do an email instead of a meeting.
That would be great. Okay, then let's, just because we have people for the two items, so, let's just make sure we get to that.
We have two executive sessions under pending potential litigation pursuant to 4230-110I. Though the first matter, which should take approximately 15 minutes, will involve Lord Scott Simmons, myself, Larry Haskell, Jim Amacio, and Dan Gadd from Risk Management. The second matter, which should take approximately 5 minutes, will involve the board, Scott Simmons, myself, and Dan Gadd.
Thank you for being timely on that.
And sorry, Lauren Williams from Risk Management as well will be in the second.
Okay, so we're gonna go into executive session for the purposes just discussed. No actions are anticipated to be taken, correct?
That's correct.
Just confirming. Okay, thank you. For 20 minutes, at the end of the 20 minutes, we will adjourn for the morning and we will come back for our 2 o'clock consent agenda meeting this afternoon.